Hi, I'm Brian Crombie, and we're going to be talking on The Brian Crombie Show. We're going to be talking about politics, arts, business, and social issues on The Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. It's a real pleasure of mine and an honor of mine tonight to introduce you to one of the most impressive city builders that I've met in the Greater Toronto Area. His name is John Cutruzzola. He is a developer, he's a construction guy, and he's also an artist. And so we're going to spend time talking about some of the work that he's done in both Toronto and the Yorkville area, as well as for the last 30, 40 years actually in Brampton, downtown Brampton, and talk a little bit about city building and what's the keys to creating a dynamic, wonderful urban environment that people want to live in and work in and play in, particularly as it relates to what he did in Yorkville and then what he's done most recently for the last 40 years or so in downtown Brampton. And then, interestingly enough, he found a hobby, and he's an artist, and he's just opened up an art gallery in Brampton last Friday night. It opened up. It's called Studio 35, and we're going to turn in the second half of the show and talk a little bit about how you find a hobby in your life and how you dedicate yourself to art. So I'm welcoming John Cutruzzola to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you for having me here, and thank you to all your audience for listening to somebody like me.
So I want to start out talking a little bit about city building, and you've told me stories about you working with the people that owned Cumberland in Yorkville and redeveloping it, and then you've also told me stories about how you really succeeded in developing downtown Brampton, and some of the keys were keeping City Hall there, building Gage Park. Tell me what you think the secrets are to building a dynamic downtown, an urban downtown, even in suburbia like Brampton or Mississauga.
There is two. I'm not some super experts in planning, or I have no degrees, and I think that as an artist, it's an instinct that you're born with. In my background, as grown in a little town of Italy, overlooking the Ionic Sea, surrounded by beauty, but not so great a time in terms of economics situation. So my education was pretty limited to mostly correspondence courses for many years.
Yeah.
However, the interest on your community, the interest of how can you be better, how can why is the difference? I always thought of the difference of how we grow up, how the children grow up. What is the difference between a ghetto and a well-to-do neighborhood? Right. What is the chances? This was something I wrote it since I think I was 26 years old, 25. I said, it doesn't take a scientist to have a look and say, what is the difference?
So what are the differences?
What is the percent in the environment in which you grow?
So is it parks? Is it schools?
It's environment. It's the connections which the child is connecting with at this early age. Is he somebody in the same position as he is, and the parents are in miserable condition, and do they drink a lot? Is a ghetto in which he?
So it's the connections in society.
It is because he has no hope, because there is no an element of help to the child that's growing up.
So it's connections, it's hope.
It's connection, it's a place.
It's mentors.
Because creating ghettos is simple, and it's visible.
Yeah.
You can go from a ghetto, the worst of the ghetto, to a ghetto can be also a well-to-do neighborhood. It can be another kind of ghetto. But economically, the reality is that the child grown into an environment where there's opportunity, where his friends can influence him in school, it can influence him on the soccer field, it can influence. There is a positive influence which in the ghetto most likely doesn't
Okay,
occur.
I accept it. So how in a city do you do that?
Thinking of that, then you have to dedicate yourself to how can I help so that
People make connections.
the kid doesn't grow up in this ghetto. So start with that and leave aside the greedy interest of, okay, if I'm going to build a building here, my friend makes money. If I were there, nobody, I don't care about the other. The idea is to be able to, once in a while to say what's good for everybody, what's good for the community, what's good for the city. And the reality is that the economy is driven by good neighborhood and good opportunities for people.
Good
a good story,
good
the economy.
Good stores,
of
good
a city,
economy,
of a town, of a big city, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The economy is driven by activities that they are on a positive side.
Okay, so as
for
a developer, how do you do that?
When as a developer, there is maybe in society the developer has the most influence on that. If you can detach yourself a little bit sometimes from all money and some money, you can do a better thing. When you intended to, I can speak for myself. When I say, what are you going to do here? Yorkville in 1968 and 67. What do you do with this place? It's in really rough shape.
It was in rough shape. It was beatniks.
It was in rough shape. It was
There's a couple of bars, and that was it.
Bars that they were there for a purpose of drinking and smoking.
Yeah.
The thing. So in my humble view, being new to the country, new to Toronto, I was looking and say what makes a neighborhood a good neighborhood is, first of all, is the cleanliness, the attractiveness, the place where people like to go.
Yeah.
So here they don't come. They came to see the hippie. They will line up on Cumberland, and it was the show of Toronto those days. Go and see the hippies smoking and the thing. But having that era been fading away, it was left not even that. It was left an empty squalor, a place that nobody wanted to go. So I had the good fortune of having people who liked me, even though my communication wasn't that good, but they understood what I'm thinking. And there was a gentleman named Harry Jordan, which had bought a block of old dilapidated houses along Yorkville, where is now the most expensive hotel, I think. And he didn't know what to do with it because there was an interruption to the plans at that time. They were buying to build high-rise. Then your relative, probably, Mayor Crombie came in. And
Mayor David Crombie.
Yes. And I don't know if you're related or not.
Yep. Distantly.
But he came up with that famous 45-foot bylaw.
Yep.
And they're stuck. Now they can't build a high-rise. So they didn't know what to do. So they called this young guy, this young Italian little guy. Somehow they thought he has some ideas. And I said to Mr. Jordan that in the center of Toronto, a growing city, the way I saw it, it doesn't have a street. It doesn't have a place of a culture, a place where people like to get together, a place where it's known.
Yeah, at that time, I think the only place that would be comparable would have been Kensington Market.
Yes, but a different thing. Was there to shop, not to a place where they gathered. You go with your girlfriend and to sit to have a coffee and ice cream. So I described that to Mr. Jordan, and he was surprised that this little Italian guy has these ideas. So he cutting out the process of, he invited me for breakfast at home. Then Mrs. Jordan liked my art, liked my knowledge of art and thing. and they had an impression because she loved art.
And then you started designing and
I started
building.
giving him that this is what we can do with Yorkville, because even though it's known for negative purpose, however, it's known. And if you can change that into a positive, then so
let me suggest to you, if I could, a couple of things that I think really make Yorkville spectacular. It is the laneway that is halfway through the block, and so lots of people don't go on the streets. They, the whole block, they walk up that laneway. The rock, the Canadian Shield rock, is just spectacular in that park. It makes it, somewhat park and somewhat commercial.
That came later.
It came later?
It came later. The beginning was to start the renovation of Hazelton. Together, Weber Giraffe appraised their office there, and they did most of the improvements in a big way. I was doing the small stuff, but they did. They were very influential in the process of rebuilding Yorkville and Cumberland.
What about, if we could skip quickly, I apologize, to downtown Brampton? What are the keys to making downtown Brampton successful?
Well, it's pretty well the same. Downtown Brampton is now at a point where it needs investment.
Yeah.
In the last 40 years, that's what it took. The political situation in Brampton was what it was, and still is.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't find our way yet. I believe that the city will find its way, but in the problem of Brampton has taken its toll.
Bramalea being a shopping center where they wanted to move City Hall to.
Right.
They moved the Region Appeal Office to.
Right, and that turned out to be a fight that raged for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
And that did a lot of damage. I would say that in that process, Miss Saga had done very well. Because when there's two people fight, there's somebody benefit. So it did have a long time of fighting, which could have been constructive.
Yeah.
I myself went at a time when they didn't know what to do. Brampton didn't like Bramalea. Bramalea didn't like Brampton. I didn't know that there was such a contrast between the two communities. I went and I said, the city has a heritage. This city, I just moved to the city in '73.
Yeah.
And a little bit at a time, you start to feel like a home. The children are born here, so this is going to.
And you kept a lot of the things like City Hall, Gage Park, right downtown.
Everything. I brought City Hall there because it was a long. If you look at it's a long fight. There was a lot of stuff went on. I thought, what else would you put City Hall in? Even if you put them together, you put Bramalea and Brampton together, where would you put the City Hall? Would you put it in a parking lot
of a shopping center?
We know the result of that. So I was serious about it. There was two things that happened. One was that they vacated the downtown, whatever little bit of activities were there. They were vacated to Shoppers World, to Bramalea City Center, and the city themselves moved the office of the city in Bramalea.
Yeah, you brought it back.
I brought it back.
We're going to take a break and come back and talk a little bit more, both about what it takes to build a city, but then also a little bit about John's artistry. Stay with us, everybody.
Welcome to Lakeshore Towers, a smart and green architectural marvel. Lakeshore Towers is Pakistan's first ultra-luxury condominium complex.
For details, call 416-716-6888.
हम हैं मैचलेस। पाकिस्तान में 7 लोकेशंस, कनाडा, अमेरिका और सऊदी अरब में हमारे ऑफिसेज। हम PIA, इत्तेहाद और एमिरेट्स के सबसे बड़े टिकटिंग एजेंट्स में शामिल। तो फिर दुनिया में कहीं भी सफर करना हो तो टिकट हमसे लीजिए। We are matchless. Call now at 647-933-9700. Visit our website www.matchlesstravels.ca. We are matchless.
Hello everyone, we welcome you all to our third anniversary sale. Huge selection of furniture, mattresses and accessories to meet all of your home furniture needs with the best selection, quality, service and the best prices in GTA. Only at Complete Home.
Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Show on Canada One TV. My guest tonight, John Cutruzzola, who is a developer and an artist. And we've chatted a little bit about some of the development that he's done in downtown Toronto and Yorkville. And we're going to come back to some of the secrets of success of his development in the last 30, 40 years in downtown Brampton. But before I go there, I want to tell you a little bit about his other passion, which is art. He's just recently opened up an art gallery in downtown Brampton called Studio 35, because 35% of all the proceeds go to Indigenous Canadians, particularly young Indigenous Canadians that are involved in art. It's a beautiful gallery right half a block from the main intersection in downtown Brampton. Opened up last week, and it's opening up with a show of his art. And his art is fascinating. Later on in life, he found, again, his passion for art, met a buddy of his who was a former childhood friend who had a studio in downtown Rome, and convinced him to come once a year and spend a couple of months in Rome painting. What a tough life, spending a couple of months in Rome painting. And we're going to show you some of his work. And so, John, maybe you could tell us something about your art.
Now, my art is now developed into more like an impressionist approach to the art and style. The figure is, especially the female figure, is the central objective to me that I use for my art. And it's, it's because of the beauty, it's because artists seek beauty, and because the female beauty it's the symbol of life for me, and I think for all of us. And I think the circumstances of all human can be described in many ways. It's always be captured by an artist in a certain moment, a certain time in our life, and in this case, it's another figure. This was inspired by a picture that I saw of 1910 Main Street, downtown Brampton. And
Main Street, downtown Brampton, really?
Yes. And this property is in 1910. You see no cars. What fascinated me is that, to describe the rough style of that time and put it into a large oil painting, which, by the way, it's sold for about $7,000. And this one is another of most recent painting, and again, it's sold for about.
But the prints are available?
The prints are available. That's why I make a limited edition of prints, no more than 10 each of the painting, so that they retain its value, and we sell for just $500. Now, as you said, this is about the pandemic that we went through in the last, and the combination of pandemic and technology that hit us 2 years ago,
really?
a year and a half ago. So as you see there is a technology that takes the form of a human.
Yep.
Which is this is again is one of those moments of beauty, of thoughtfulness and beauty. It's just that model that inspired me to just make it as simple as is seen as thoughtful, just beautiful. This was inspired by the problem we had uncovered in the last couple of years in terms of the children.
Residential schools.
The residential
Yeah.
schools. So I asked this lady if I could paint her, and as you see in the background, there are children, and there's the symbol of freedom
Right.
in the background. I think we have an obligation. This is what inspired me to do this endowment that for the bursary dedicated to indigenous students that want to
Yep.
take art. And that is administered by Algoma University.
Right.
The fund is supposed to grow, and people, whenever they buy a piece of art from me, the 35% of it goes direct into the foundation that I set up, and hope that it grows to benefit a lot of the kids.
Yeah.
And trying to make up for the wrong we've done. So this is, again, beauty of the life needs to feed a child living in misery.
Mhm.
This is a lady that is begging on the street, and somebody give a sandwich feeds the baby. And those are the things. There is a cat in the scene, and the lady, as many artists before me, did the same kind.
The reclining nude.
Yes, it's the beauty, it's the mystery, it's the combination of things that drive a life and love. As a child, just thought, for me, sitting in the garden was just a beautiful thing to paint. And of course, here I'm talking about, the solitary life of students, living in the attic and somewhere near the university for, the struggle and the beauty
Yeah.
of that time.
And so it's, you think, sort of impressionist of primarily people, figures.
I do also, as you see, I do also cityscape and
Yeah.
and landscape, but mainly my theme is people.
And how long have you been doing art?
I did that since I was a kid.
Yeah.
On and off. Necessity drives your life. At time I did less, and sometimes I did more. It's the story for me of arts as it began when I was very 8 years old.
Mhm.
But the ability to dedicate fully to art has taken the last 25 years.
What a fascinating story. And you met this childhood friend of yours who's also a very accomplished artist.
Giovanni Federico is a very well-known, very great artist, very well-known in Rome. We went to school. We went to school, elementary school, until grade 3. In grade 3, we family moved away. We didn't see each other anymore. In 2004, I went back to spend a week in my town, which I haven't done for 30 years before, 40 years. And I asked for him. He was there. We met, and we found out that he was doing what I was doing, that we both painting. So,
And you now share a studio in
and the
Rome.
thing is, we have the same name. We were born in the same year. We were born in the same town. It seems that we had a lot in common, and we're both doing art after 50 years that we never saw each other. So it was a kind of
Synchronicity.
yes. And he told me that he has.
They moved their city hall to a shopping center, which is what the Region Appeal did by moving to Bramalea. And then you've got a city hall by a shopping center. It doesn't really create a sense of place. One of the things that you did is you have the city hall, buildings beside it, Gage Park, trying to develop, the Rose Theater. Do you think that's what
Yes,
it takes to create a downtown?
The synergy of a city needs synergy. You
Yeah.
need a center. You need a center to create pride. The pride in the people. When you're well done, the center creates an economic spin-off,
Yeah.
an economic radius of growth around, because the hospital, the office, a place where people like to go,
Hang around.
spend and time to work, to live, and connections I mean, city is not just made of downtown, but the downtown is where everything radiated from, including our prestige.
Yeah.
If we don't have a place to brag about our city, we have nothing.
So there's a famous American sociologist that talked about the third place. And he said, we all have a third place. The first place is our home.
Right.
The second place is our work. But the third place is where we go to unwind.
Exactly.
And that third place in Britain would be the local pub. In Rome, it's the street that you hang out and have a pizza and a drink at, or a cappuccino. In France, it's those beautiful cafes. And he says the problem in Canada and America is we don't have vibrant third places that we can go and just be us.
It started to change. People started to find out what the damage that did in the last 100 years of sprawl and all over the place. The necessity of having a place on which we can feel proud of,
Right.
and to unwind and to meet the people, where the young people like to spend the Saturday night. There is nothing to do around the shopping center.
Yeah.
Sorry. And the fact is that the economy of the city is based on its attraction. Where do the investor prefer to invest? In a dynamic city where their manager and their workers like to live and work, or do they want to go to a place where they're unknown and the quality of life for his wife, for his family, for the manager, for them, doesn't exist. So you choose. That's the difference between choosing where do I go to invest my $100 million plan. Am I going to do it in a city where my family is proud of?
Yeah.
Or am I going to go to? Those are the first big loss that you cause when you're not thinking. When you build a hospital, and you build a hospital in the outskirts of a place where nobody benefits from its presence, it's
Which would be the example of Credit Valley in Mississauga. It's across from a big mall, and there's no street life.
Imagine having, like Brampton, you had a hospital in the center of the city.
And you moved it.
And you moved. And you created 25 years of blight. 25 billions of
25 years of blight.
blight.
Really?
Yes, because 25 years around the hospital, there was nothing happening. And so you lose the tax, you lose growth, you lose prestige.
Yeah.
Reverse that, and if you had to spend the same amount of money you had to spend in your core, you would have generated billions of dollars in the last 30 years as a result.
University Avenue in Toronto was very successful.
It doesn't take a scientist to figure out why certain things are priorities.
Yeah.
And why do you have a theater, a place of culture in general, like the skating rink on Engage Park.
It's beautiful.
It's a possibility. The Art Gallery of Hill is a great thing.
And the Rose Theater.
The Rose Theater. All these things was this guy that undertook the fight to make sure.
And you've done a great job, and I really commend you for it. We're going to have to leave it there, but I really wanted to introduce you to John Cutruzzola because of his art that I've shared with you, and Gallery 35 that I recommend you go check out, but also because of his vision for downtown Brampton and what he did previously in Yorkville. And I think he's got the secret. And it's in survey after survey, people say they want to live in these or close to these communities like Port Credit, like the Beaches, like Blair's Village, like Kitsilano. And they're not 100 units per acre and more condominiums, and they're not necessarily the 3 or 6 units per acre of suburban sprawl. They're 20 to 40 units per acre. They're the row houses or the brownstones or the townhomes or the close together homes you get in Blair's Village or the Beaches. And they've got the dynamic urban environment that John's talked about. It's a city hall, it's a park, whether it be the Big Rock in Yorkville or the Gage Park in Brampton. It's got shops, it's got restaurants, it's got something to do, and it's got street life. And it's that third place that we need to go to meet our friends, to people watch, and to relax a little bit. And so it's something we got to think about, and how we do that in Mississauga around a shopping center, in Brampton where you've done a good job of building, but there's clearly more to go, and elsewhere in our city. Anyway, John Cutruzzola, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here, and thank you to the listeners.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody.